Hey everybody, it's Ian the Off Kilter Crafter. I hope you're having a great day today. It's been a while since I've had a chance to sew after having COVID, moving, and having surgery, but I'm finally back into it and I'm finally ready to get going again on a Cotton Cuts puzzle mystery quilt. I'm a couple clues behind, but let's go ahead and start working on clue number 6 for So Sweet. All right, I have my instructions for clue 6 of the large puzzle mystery quilt, So Sweet. I have my packet with all the fabric for clue number 6, and I of course have my color guide, my fabric guide. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up our package and see what pieces we have included in this package. First off, we have 12 squares of F fabric. We have 12 squares of B fabric. We have 8 squares of C fabric, and we have 4 squares of A fabric. We also have 12 small triangles of A fabric. We have 8 small triangles of D fabric, and we have 4 small triangles of F fabric. We also have, this is B fabric, and there are 4 rectangles, long rectangles of our B fabric. I don't know how I'm going to fit all these onto the screen, but we'll keep going here. I have 4 rectangles of D fabric. I also have 8 large triangles of D fabric. I have 8 large triangles of B fabric. I have 4 large squares of B fabric. And lastly, I have 4 large rectangles of B fabric. Not exactly sure if that's what they're called in the instructions. I'll look at that as we get started. We're going to be making 2 sections. So we have section 6A and 6B to get through today. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of these on the table, and I'll come back with our step number 1. Okay, starting off with step number 1 for section 6A, it says you'll be making 2 of section 6A's. The instructions below tell you how to make both sections at the same time. Starting off on step number 1, it says to sew a large triangle of B. I know it's kind of hard to see it here on my tabletop because it's almost the exact same color as my tabletop, but I promise you fabric B is down here. We have a large triangle of B fabric and a large triangle of D fabric. And we're going to be sewing these together just like this, regular half square triangles, and we'll be pressing towards our D fabric whenever we get these put together. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to be making 8 of them in total. So I'm going to go ahead and sew all 8 of these together, and I'll come back here when it's time to press it out. Okay, I have sewn all 8 of those together, and now I'm pressing them out. Remember, we're pressing towards our D fabric. In this case, it is the blue macaw material for me in my colorway, and I'm going to do it just like that. So now we have 8 of these half square triangles of our B and D fabric. I'm going to go ahead and move on to step number 2. All right, moving on to step number 2, it says to join a large B square to the left of step 1, and we're going to make 4 of these. So don't do this whole stack that we just put together. Don't add the fabric of the B square onto all of them, although I don't think we can because I don't think we have enough to do 8 of these. But anyways, we're adding these over just like this. Make sure that you're separating out your B fabric with the D triangle in between just like this, because you know me, I would love to match these up, but make sure that you are putting them on the correct side just like this. I'm going to go ahead and put all 4 of these together, and I'm going to come back when it's time to press it out. All right, I have sewn all 4 of those together, and the instructions say to press it towards our B square, our large B square. So I'm going to go ahead and press it over there just like that. So now I have 4 of those all done. We're going to go ahead and move on to step number 3. Okay, moving on to step number 3, it says to join step 2 units together as shown. We're going to make 2 of these in total. So basically all we're doing is we're taking our shape that we just made from step number 2, we're going to turn one of them 180 degrees, so that way we have this bow tie. I always refer to the bow ties, but here's the bow tie. We're going to go ahead and make 2 of these that have the bow ties together, and I'm going to be using the center point as the way to line them up, because these seams will nest into each other and it'll be easier to line those up. So I'm going to go ahead and sew both of these together. We're making 2 of them in total. We'll go ahead and sew these together, and I'll come back when it's time to press it out. All right, I have finished that out. By the way, my air conditioner kicked in, so if you can hear that, I do apologize, but it is way too hot here in Texas to turn it off, so it's just gonna run in the background. Anyways, so now we're pressing this out. It doesn't really matter which way you're pressing because this block is basically identical when you turn it 180 degrees. So it's pretty much the same no matter what. You just have to watch this. I found this point right here wants to stay up a little bit because of the bulk that's there. So as long as you're pressing it one way or the other, it's not a huge deal. And there we go. So I've gone ahead and pressed that, and now I have two of these with my seam allowance now pointing downwards there we go, just like that. All right, so we have two of them. This is done. Let's move on to step number 4. All right, moving on to step number 4, it says to join a small triangle of A to a small triangle of D. We're gonna make 8 of these in total, so we're just gonna make more half square triangles, but this time smaller, using this A-D combination. I'm gonna go ahead and put all 8 together and come back here when it's time to press it out. Okay, I have sewn all those together. It is now time to press them out. So I have pressed all except this last one out. And there we go. So now I have 8 half square triangles of my D and A fabric. We pressed towards our D fabric. Now it's time to move on to step number 5. Okay, moving on to step number 5, it says to join a step 4 unit to each end of the D rectangle, making sure that the D triangles are next to the D rectangle. So we're basically just creating a pattern just like this. So make sure that those D fabrics are lined up next to each other, just like I have here on mine. We're gonna be making 4 of these in total, so I'm gonna go ahead and sew all 4 together, and then I'll come back here when it's time to press it out. Okay, I have pressed them. Well, I have pressed 3 of them, 3 out of the 4, and we're pressing them towards our center D rectangle, just like so. Flip it around and do the same thing again, and try not to burn my thumbs as I'm doing this. There we go. All right, so I've done all 4 of those, and they look something like this when it's all said and done with. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to step number 6. All right, moving on to step number 6, it says to join a step 5 unit to the left and right of a step 3 unit, making sure that the A triangles are on the outside. So we're basically just going to put them together. It's a little bit hard because my work surface isn't. Let me move the instructions and then I can do it better there. All right, so we're just going to add these to the left and right, just like this, making sure that our A triangles are facing outwards away from the center of our block. We're going to make 2 of these in total, and we'll press towards the center whenever we're all said and done, but we're only making 2 of these. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these 2 together, and then I'll come back when it's time to press it out. Okay, it's time to press this out. I don't remember in the last shot if I had my bow ties going the right way, but they're supposed to be going in this direction that you see here on my camera right now. I'm pressing these inwards because the directions tell me to press towards the center of my block. So I'm doing that right now. It may try to fight you a little bit here in the points, so just, you know, kind of manhandle it a little bit and you'll be able to get it hopefully laid down quite nicely. I know that this one's gonna fight me kind of hard here, but that's okay. You'll notice that my blocks are not perfect. Remember, we're not going for perfection, we're going for a finished quilt top. So that's what I'm doing, and I even had a little bit of my fabric kind of off kilter a little bit, which is on brand for me, but it might make it a little harder when I'm putting the final quilt together to have it exactly perfect. And again, we're not going for perfection. Basically at this moment, I'm just filling time while I iron this all out. All right, there we go. So now I have 2 blocks that look exactly like this. We're gonna set these off to the side and move on to, I think it's step 7. All right, moving on to step 7, it says to join a small triangle of A to a small triangle of F. We're gonna make 4 of these half square triangles in all, and then we'll come back and press it out towards our F fabric. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew 4 of these together, and I'll meet you back here when it's time to press it all out. Okay, I've sewn all 4 of those together. I'm now pressing my fabric towards my F fabric, just like so, and I now have, let's flip that just like that, there we go. So now I have 4 of those half square triangles. Let's move on to step number 8. Okay, moving on to step number 8. What we're doing is we're joining step 7 units together, and then we're adding a small square of A and a small square of C to each end. So we're just basically going to create a shape that looks like this. We got our triangle shape that kind of forms there in the center. We're just going to sew these out from our center. So we're going to sew this one first, then we're going to add on our A fabric, and then we're going to add on our C fabric, just like this, and we're going to be pressing it out from the center whenever we press these together, and in total, we're going to make 2 of these. So I'm going to go ahead and gather all this up, take it over to my sewing machine, and I'll come back to press it all out. Okay, I have completed that. It's now time to press it out. We're pressing from the center out towards the ends. I don't know why, but I can never seem to get, we've done this similar type of thing before, and it seems like every time I do this, mine always bow a little bit, and I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong. I think it has to do with this center part, to be honest, but that's okay. Remember, not going for perfect, going for completed. All right, so there we go. Not perfect, but we're gonna run with it. So that's gonna be step number 8. We're gonna move on to step number 9. Moving on to step number 9, it says to join a step 8 unit to the top of a step 6 unit. We're going to be making sure that our A triangles are on the outside. So all of our A triangles facing outwards. And we're going to put the top on just like that. You can match up these seams right here. This should, do these nest? I don't know if they, yes, they should. Yes, they should nest, if I'm looking at this correctly. Yes, okay. I had to look at it like 3 or 4 times. So that should hopefully help you kind of line up these points right here to give you a more finished look, but don't worry if it doesn't end up coming out perfectly. We're gonna make 2 of these in total, and we'll be done with our section 6A. Let's go ahead and sew this together, and I'll be back to press it out. Okay, I now have 2 of these section 6A that look like this. It is all said and done with. I'll go ahead and label these with section 6A or clue 6A, either way. And we're going to go ahead and move on to finishing out section 6B. Hopefully this doesn't take very long because this actually took a while for me to put together. So I'm going to go ahead and put this aside and we'll start in on section 6B. All right, I should have done this last time and put it on top of my mat here, but what we have for our step number 1, it says to sew a small triangle of B to a small triangle of F. We're going to make 12 of these in total. So we're going to go ahead and sew 12 of these squares together. This should go together a lot quicker, but I'm going to go ahead and sew these together, and we'll be pressing towards our F fabric when it's all said and done with. All right, I have sewn all 12 of those together, so now I'm moving on to pressing them out. We're going to press towards our F fabric, like I'm doing right now, pressing towards my F fabric. So there we go, all of my 12 are right there. Let's go ahead and move on to step number 2. Okay, moving on to step number 2, it says to sew a step 1 unit to the left of a long rectangle of B and a square C to the right. So we're just going to be adding our long B rectangle onto what we just did, and then we're going to sew on a C square after that. So I have all 4 of mine lined up right here, getting ready to take it to the sewing machine. But this is what we're going to be making. We're going to be making 4 of these in total. So I'm going to go gather all this up, take it over to the sewing machine. Well, I forgot to turn the camera on when I was pressing these out, but don't worry, it's not hard. You're just going to be pressing towards our center B fabric, our long rectangle of B from either side. You're just going to be pressing it into the center, just like I did here. So now we have 4 of those. It looks like we're going to be setting these off to the side, so I'm going to go ahead and do that and get the next step ready. All right, moving on to step 3 of this, we're going to be joining 2 step 1 units together as shown. So we're going to take our bottom one here, and I'm going to flip it around 180. Actually, I kid you, because this needs to go here. There we go. Okay, sometimes I get a little brain backwards. We need our F fabric in the top left and the bottom right, and our B fabric in the bottom left and top right. So it's going to look like this whenever we're all said and done. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these together. We need 4 of these in total, so I'm going to go ahead and sew 4 of them together, and I'll meet you back here when it's time to press it out. Okay, there we go. I have completed doing all 4 of those, and I've also pressed it downwards, although it doesn't matter because if you flip it 180, it works the same. So as long as you're doing that, no big deal. Let's move on to step number 4. All right, moving on to step number 4, it says to join a section 6A step 1 unit to the left of a step 3 unit. And then we're also going to add our large rectangle of B to the right. So remember we made some of these DB half square triangles. Goodness gracious, half square triangle pieces from section 6A. We had some left over. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add those on to the left of our step 3 that we just finished, and then we add the large B rectangle onto that as well. We're going to make 4 of these in total. So just like what you see here, this is what we're making. I'm going to go ahead and sew all 4 of them together, and I'll meet you here when it's time to press it out. Okay, I have finished with step number 4, and I have pressed them as the instructions have told me out from our center piece right here, our step number 3. We're pressing out from there. Sorry that I keep forgetting to do that on camera, but it's pretty simple to do. So we press out from step 3 whenever we sew all 3 pieces together. And now we're going to move on to step number 5. Okay, moving on to step number 5, it says to join a step 2 unit above a step 4 unit. We're going to make 4 of these in total, and what we're looking for is for our F fabric to form this diagonal shape. So your C fabric, your lone C fabric over here in the top right corner, and then your lone D fabric triangle is going to be down here in the bottom left. So we're going to make 4 of these in total. You can match it up using this seam right here. This is going to give you the best indicator of how to align these two, and they should, I'm looking at them, that one goes that way. Yep, these nest, so that way you are able to make it a little easier. I'm going to go ahead and sew all 4 together, and I'll be back when it's time to press it out. All right, I have completed all of that. I have sewn all 4 of those together, and now I'm pressing towards our step 4 that we completed just a moment ago. I'm pressing towards that one. It's a little bit harder with my large clue and small iron. This iron works really great for the smaller pieces, but I probably should use like a regular sized iron to do the final pressing on these larger blocks, but either way, it's all good. All right, so I have completed 4 of those, and they look like this. I'm very happy with how well my seams lined up. I'm really happy with that. But there's all 4 of those, and that finishes off that finishes off section 6B. And that's going to do it for our clue number 6. Remember that I'm labeling my first one clue 6A and my second one that we completed clue 6B, or you can do them section 6A and section 6B. Either way, whatever works best for you to remember. But we are done with clue number 6, and it'll be time for clue number 7.